found the mother strawberry? How did I end up in Maine?
Yeah, how did you end up in Maine?
Well, like I said, I worked for my dad, and you know, once you reach age 18, you want to get away. You want to get away. We were living in the D.C. area at the time, and University of Maine sounded like a nice place. It was, far enough away so that they couldn't come up for the weekend, and yet close enough so on vacation you could drive down. I wanted to go into forestry, and they had a very good program. I got accepted there, VPI, and University of Colorado State. I decided that was too far. VPI was too close. Maine was just right. So I was in forestry for 2 years, and then I switched over to wildlife and worked for the government for a year down in the D.C. area, Tucson Wildlife Research Center, and decided making sawdust wasn't that bad a deal after all.
So you were working...
I was working for my dad all through most of high school, yeah.
He had a woodworking business?
We did he had general contracting, but we did mostly small additions and built-ins and kitchens and, restoration work, all that kind of stuff. We did a fair share of, built-ins, closets and wainscoting and cabinets, and oh God, I hated kitchen cabinets.
But you still do them for yourself, right? And
for myself,
and
the select few, but I never signed my name to them. I don't advertise the fact, and I haven't built any in 30 years, thank goodness.
You just recently finished up your cabinets too. Like put all the finishing touches on them over all the years.
Yeah, Peg finally got to me. We want glass doors up top. Okay, so I had to make those.
Right.
And they're just, they're solid oak glass doors, mortised and tenoned and pinned. Not a big deal. I just hate going out on a job. I don't know how. I was talking to Nancy Hiller, and she loves going out, 6 hours away, drag your tools over, all your pieces, and invariably, when I worked for my dad, we always forgot something. There's always a tool that was missing, a little part here, and then you'd have to drive back and forth. And I hate working on my knees. It's really no fun. And I feel, in my shop, I can adjust to any mistake I made. If you're on the job and you don't have the right tool,
it's a lot harder to
adjust. It is a lot harder. Yeah. And so I never let on to anybody that I did kitchens. And I haven't done any.
You just did.
Well, I'm about to retire, and then I'm not going to do anything.
You're about to retire. What's going to happen? What are you going to do after you retire?
Then I'll have spare time.
To do what?
Well, see that garden over there? It needs work. The lawn needs mowing. The trees, I got 25 acres. I haven't trimmed trees in 10, 15 years.
Do you still plan on doing woodworking on
yeah, but just on the side. But the big advantage to doing it part-time is it takes the pressure off. When you have a deadline coming up, you've got 6 hours of sanding, you've got to work through it. Even if you're tired of it, I don't know.
If you want to go hang out with Peg, who's retired.
Oh, man.
Having all the fun.
Practically have to lock the shop. She'll come in, let's go out for coffee, or let's go take pictures, or you want to go see...
Let's go have fun, Chris.
Let's go have fun, yeah. And this is the first summer I haven't done any teaching, and it's really great. I don't know how many concerts and parties and get-togethers I missed because, I'm going to be in New Jersey or Canada teaching, or, Maine only has 3 months of summer, and if 6 weeks are taken up with teaching, that kind of shoots the whole thing.
So what are your favorite parts about Maine? Where are your favorite places?
Oh, everywhere. I mean, it's a huge state. It takes you longer to go from here to northern Maine than from here to New York City. And there's so many places I haven't been to, but we like to go up the coast. Bar Harbor is a beautiful place, Acadia National Park, but you go up beyond there. Very few people go to the next peninsula over, which is also part of Acadia, and Scoodic. and it's really wild. I mean,
Oh,
you've got
that's a
all
good
that
tip.
pink granite, and when I was taking geology at the University of Maine, we had to do a report on what actually happened, and you could see the pink granite, and then there'd be these fissures with black basalt, with the stone had actually split, and the volcanic basalt had crept up through there, and it's really cool to see. And then the coast, they get to come there after a nice storm, and the waves come crashing in on that granite. It's really, really nice. And there are a lot of little, antique stores and waterfalls and hiking trails, and it's just so much to see if you don't mind the mosquitoes and
There
the
are a lot of
tourists.
mosquitoes.
But it's nice. I mean, but the Portland area has become. We now have traffic jams in Portland. It didn't used to be that way, and all the nice little old houses been torn down and turned into luxury condos, and new ones going up. We used to go down to Makuchi's grocery and you could see the water. Now it's just, you can't see the water anymore because of all the luxury condos. And that stuff is starting to creep up the coast.
Portland's, what, an hour from here?
Portland's 35 minutes. I mean, it's nice to be close. They've got good restaurants, got a lot of artsy things, good food, grocery stores. One of my close lumber distributors is there when I need, a spare piece here and there. I go out and pick some up. Decent hardware stores. And if you want big time, you get on the Amtrak and you go to Boston. That's another 2 hours. So.
Big time.
Yeah, well, there are things you can do down in Boston you can't do here. But still, the pace of life is a lot slower, more enjoyable. And I like working alone. It's been good to me.
So you and Pegs are a really good team. How did you meet?
In a dark room.
Really?
Oh, yeah, it's true. She was taking a course in photography, and a friend of mine from high school was taking the same course, and he wanted me to come and help him. He was taking some action shots, so I did some bicycling around while he was doing pictures. And then we all went out for pizza and beer afterwards, and there was this young honey in a pitted out t-shirt and short shorts and had her hair in a wart. So we started hanging out together, going on photo shoots, and yeah.
And you're still going on photo shoots
She's
with her.
still going on photo shoots, yep.
You've developed a relationship with Nick Offerman. How did that happen? You were on Parks and Rec, right?
Yeah, that actually happened the first year of Fine Woodworking Live.
Oh, the one in New Paltz.
In New Paltz, yes. We did this kind of thing,
Oh, you and Nick
It wasn't
did?
a Shop Dog Live. It was just a recording session, a shorty, and Nick was there, and he was the guest speaker.
Oh, right.
And
yeah.
he wanted to meet me, and so I said okay, and we got to talking, and he put on quite the show. I mean, there wasn't anybody that didn't get grossed out. It was wonderful.
He was hilarious.
He was hilarious. Yes, yes. And so we kept in touch, and before I left Fine Woodworking Live, he said, "Well, you ought to be on my TV show." And I said, "Figured, yeah, right." So later that year, I get this call from his agent. "We'd like to have you come to California." "You're serious?" "I don't want to go to California." But Peg says, "Well, Olympia Snow has been on that show. You really should go. You'd be the second person from Maine." So I went. It was great. It was a good time.
Yeah.
And they were all very professional. We got to meet all kinds of people. Got to go to his shop, have a few beers. And I think the next year he came over. He was doing a play in Boston.
Oh, okay.
And taking a course at North Bennett Street School on chair making.
Oh, he was taking the course?
He was taking the
wow.
course
Okay.
during the day, and then he was on stage at night. And then on the weekend, he came up here, and we hung around the shop for a while, and I showed him how to make speed tenons. And then we went up to Lee Nielsen, hung out there, and got the full tour, and had a great time. It was a lot of fun. He's a nice guy. He really is a nice guy. I mean, you figure, Hollywood actors are stuffed shirts. The kid's from, farming community in Illinois, and
The kid.
yeah, well, anybody younger than me is a kid. You're a kid. Even Ben is a kid, puppy.
Ben is a puppy.
A Saint Bernard, but a puppy.
Hi, Ben.
Hey. Oh, it's nice to have a cameraman with a sense of humor. Isn't it?
Right. Ben has a great sense of humor.
This is good.
And a great laugh. He has the best laugh.
Really?
It's all getting
I
cut.
think so.
Oh no! Come on, Ben. We're having such a good time. Cheer up. Have a strawberry.
So have you ever made anything that he's waiting for you to chuck a strawberry at him?
Made
Good
anything
catch. that you really didn't want to make? You really just...
Oh yes,
somebody
twice.
Twice?
I got conned into it twice. There was
The
a
same
fella-
thing?
The same thing. Okay. When I first started out, when you don't have much of a track record, I've been in business about 5-6 years, and word did get out that I did some decent work. And this fella came in and wanted this huge piece. It was 2 4x8 uprights, black walnut, with a 6-foot counter in between, and then a 6-foot valance on top. And this whole thing was designed by an interior designer, and it was just uglier than sin. I mean, it was just, it had little fluting and it had little curly cues, and then the counter in between had dark green marble, which wasn't too bad. But the upper doors, they didn't want glass. The designer specified brass chicken wire. Oh, come on. This was, it was 14 feet long, 8 feet high, and about 2 feet deep. It took up a good portion of the wall, and we built it in 4 pieces and put it all together. And there were little carvings, and there was fluting, and there was all kinds of stuff going on. And it was one of those pieces. It did not get a silver dollar. I did not sign my name to it. I don't even have pictures of it. I have drawings. Okay. The guy sold his house, and 12 years later, we bought a place in Falmouth. I want another one. And so I tripled the price, hoping he'd go away. And he said, well, it's quite a bit higher than the last time. I said, yeah, well, the bridges you're building now are quite a bit higher than they were 12 years ago too, right? Yeah, he ate that up and he said, go ahead. Oh, man. And the first one I did was in a big, huge, long, white room, glass on the other side overlooking the water. The second piece went into a room with no windows, very small, and walnut is a wood that really sucks up the light, and it just looked awful in there. I was mortified. He liked it. I mean, it was identical to the first one. It just didn't fit the space. And again, I didn't sign that one either, or did I take pictures of it. But, when you have to pay the bills, you have to pay the bills. And like I said, I upped the price plenty, and he still went for it. So what can you do?
I guess that took the sting out of it.
It took the sting out of it, yes.
What's your favorite thing that you've made, something that you'd want to make again?
Actually, my favorite thing is always something I haven't built yet, a nice new piece, because it's challenging the design process, the proportions, and how's it going to turn out. I don't do a lot of mock-ups or anything like that. I don't think I've ever done a mock-up, except a chair. Chair building is different from case construction. And I've got a pretty good vision of how things are going to turn out. After 30, 40 years of doing this, you get a feel for that sort of thing. And but new pieces, you can generally tell, the wood wants to be this dimension, and the little stiles and rails want to be that dimension, because I've made so many in case pieces in various sizes, and they all seem to work out.
So you started out with a lot of built-ins and kitchen cabinets, and now even though you have a lot of your own designs, you're kind of known as the shaker guy. How did you go from
there are
here
worse
to there?
things in life.
No, I'm not saying it's a bad thing.
When I first came to town, I've always admired shaker furniture, and I grew up with a lot of Scandinavian mid-century modern, which was, fairly well influenced by Shaker design. The the Danes and the Scandinavians pretty much admitted they got a lot of their inspiration from Shaker pieces when Edward Deming Andrews' book, Religion and Wood, came out. So I was familiar with that vocabulary of clean simplicity. And then while I was working in D.C. For the government, there was a show down there at the Renwick Gallery, just called Shaker, and I went there 6, 8, 10 times, and it was just amazing. And little realizing that 2 of those pieces would end up in that shop over there for me to copy 40 years later. It was just really cool. Anyway, I came and got a job up here, worked up here for a while, and when we moved to New Gloucester, I figured here I am in Sabbath Day Lake, same town where the last Shaker community. At the time, there were still a couple of Shakers at Canterbury. I just went over there and I said, look, if you need anything fixed, repaired, or worked on, I'll do it for the price of materials. And I've been doing that ever since. So I got my foot in the door, and really explored and appreciated the pieces that they had in their collection, and started collecting, all kinds of Shaker books, and building my vocabulary and my catalog, my designs, pretty much on their aesthetics. Keep it simple, keep it clean, get rid of the gingerbread, nice flat surfaces, no gewgaws. Really, it spoke to me. And I've been doing that ever since. And the longer you work at anything, you begin to refine it. You admire people. I admire people like Sam Maloof and George Nakashima, because they had a vocabulary of their own. And instead of going, in this direction and that direction, and let's try this and let's try something else, they kept refining their own designs to the point where if you see a Maloof piece, that's a Maloof piece. You can see it in a museum from a mile away. And the same with Nakashima. Yeah. And I think the same with the Shaker influence on my work. At least I like to think so.
I'd agree with that. I asked Peg where she would want to travel in your impending retirement.
Oh, man.
That I hope doesn't actually happen, but I don't think I have a lot of say in the matter. Where would you like to travel? Where would you want to go with Peg?
I want to take a train trip across Canada.
Oh, good. She has
she
to
mention
say.
That?
Well, she said he better say Canada.
Yeah. Okay. All right. And so we save up our pennies. I want to go first class. It was just amazing. A couple of years I taught up there, and the American Library Association had their meeting in Toronto. I was teaching in Ottawa.
And Peg
went to the conference in Toronto, and then took the train from there to Ottawa and went first class. And she said it was just amazing. They come in, they offer you wine, you get, everybody else it was hot. It was the middle of the summer. First class was air conditioned. They serve you wine. They serve you, really good food, big chairs. It's like first class on an airplane.
Yeah, that sounds pretty great.
It is pretty great. There's quite a bit of difference in price, but if, it's something I've always wanted to do. I've not been out west much except a couple of times teaching. Been up to Alaska. That's another nice place to go. There are parts I'd like to go in Europe, but I really hate flying. Unless you can afford to fly first class and you're 6'3", 7 hours in an airplane. No, I turned down my last teaching gig in Germany because I didn't want to fly. The last time was so awful. Flying back. It was fun to teach there. And if they'd offered me the chance 10 years ago while my parents were still living in Germany, I would have jumped at the chance. But no, not anymore. Thanks, bye.
So I have a really sensitive question to ask you.
Okay. I can deal with it, I hope.
Tattoos. You've recently gotten some tattoos.
Well, yeah, the past 4 years, I guess. 3, 4 years, yeah.
So
I've always toyed with the idea, and they've become very popular. And my daughter finally said, "Father, stop talking and get one." So I got my first one, which nobody knows about, and then I started getting some nice trees and tools. I came within a week of being a Canadian, so I have a nice maple leaf up here, and I've got a cherry tree, and I've got a black walnut, which was on my business card when I first started my shop in Maryland.
And you have the tools on this
And
arm?
I've been working
the
on the
leaf.
Lee Nielsen catalog here. And then I've got a white pine, which is kind of, the symbol of the state of Maine, the state tree. And then more recently, I've combined my love of my dear life with my work with the shakers. And I got a shaker peg on there. It's some peg. I haven't shown that to Brother Arnold yet, but he'll understand, I'm sure.
So, are we...
Any other intimate questions like that, ma'am?
Well, since you say intimate, you're not going to tell us about the first one you got?
Oh, it's a butterfly joint. Where do you put the butterfly joint? Come on.
I don't know. Where do you put the butterfly joint?
Every woodworker knows where butterfly joints go. Come on.
All right, we'll leave it at that.
We'll leave it at that. Okay. Next.
How did you partnered with Lee Nielsen a couple times? Can you tell me about that?
I helped them work on the chisels, and he ended up asking me what kind of handles they should use, and I, from my wood tech background, I suggested the hornbeam, which incidentally is what a lot of the original Stanley 750s and other chisels used to have, even though some of them were dyed. It's a very tough wood, a very strong wood, and you can beat the crap out of it. I mean, I bought that set of chisels there when they first came out, when he first offered them. And I've been wailing away, and I've only broken one handle in the whole, 10, 12, 14 years, whatever it's been. And I tested out a couple of chisels for him. He wasn't sure how to make them. He was going to make some out of cast steel, and then he tried 2 or 3 other things before he finally settled on the A2 and the O1 or O2 steel that he's using now, and they're milled out of solid stock, and all the milling and turning is done beforehand, and then they're heat treated and cryogenically treated. They are just amazing chisels. This is my 5th full-size case piece that I'm doing, and I think the last time I sharpened these chisels was, it was before Fine Woodworking Live.
Which was a few months ago.
It was April,
Yeah.
May, June, yeah. So, I mean, I go, every 3 to 4 months, whether they need it or not, I sharpen. Sharpening is not my favorite pastime. It's one of those things that you have to do, but nobody pays you to do it.
Like laundry.
Like laundry, very much like laundry. But these tools really keep a really nice edge. And then I came up with a set of lock chisels. They're just a little offset chisel. When you have, it's our neighbor and his girlfriend on his Harley.
Is that the same guy who was in the Porsche yesterday? Or what?
No, this was somebody else.
Okay.
This is somebody else. He lives up the road. Anyway, a lock chisel is when you have a very small drawer and you've got a mortise lock, and the strike has to go somewhere, and you really can't get in there with a full-length chisel, so you have these little offset L-shaped pieces. And the originals were usually done out of a bent piece of metal, and they sort of had rounded corners, and you tap them with the side of your hammer because you can't get the full hammerhead into the opening, and it kept slipping off. My dad had one. I found 2 antiques. They were all made the same way. I said, why doesn't anybody make these with a square corner with a little anvil on top? You can hit it and it doesn't slide. So I talked to Tom, and I made a drawing for him, and he ended up making those. And I've designed a couple of router bits for Lee Valley Tools up in Canada. And then my pride and joy is the expansion washer, which is basically a regular washer sort of stretched out into a little racetrack. And you can put a round head screw on there and another washer, and you can really bear down on it. I found that when you have a slot for the screw to ride in. Once that screw head digs into the wood, it really doesn't want to move. But if you have the expansion washer and another washer on top of that, you can bear down incredibly hard to pull two pieces of wood together, and they will in fact slide over it without the head digging into the wood.
And who did you develop that with?
Robin Lee at Lee Valley Tools.
Okay.
And, you know, as soon as it hit the catalog, everybody and their grandmother started copying it, which is pretty much fair game in most any industries, you know, unless it's patented, and you can't really patent a washer. I mean, you change a couple of dimensions, and washer's been around forever. It's just a different shape.
So how did you get into writing? You've written countless articles for
I
fine
have,
woodworking.
and
You have.
early on in my career, I guess it was 1987 or 88, I'd heard about a fellow who invented a portable band mill. It was a guy in New Hampshire. It was the first time I'd ever heard of anybody with a portable bandsaw that you could haul behind your truck and mill lumber. And I went down to see him, and I wrote up a little blurb, and it got published in Wooden Boat magazine. And I said, what the hell, I'll send it to Fine Woodworking, because I've been a subscriber since day one. And they liked it and published it, even though they, you know, it went into the editorial blender, and you could sometimes see 3 words that I'd actually written. The way it usually goes, you know how that is. It doesn't matter as long as you get paid. So, and then I submitted another one.
So your first article with Fine Woodworking magazine was
Was a small, you know, just I guess it was a sidebar of some sort.
about somebody else
Who had invented this,
the
this
mini
band
mill,
mill.
basically.
Yeah.
Okay.
And Dick Burrows, who was the editor at the time, he said, wow, you seem to know what you're doing in woodworking, and you know grammar. And you know English. Well, you know, English is my second language, so I try to be good.
Are you fluent in German?
Yeah, on a first grade level. I was 7 when we came over, so, you know, that's not much of a vocabulary. It's like listening to Riley now in English. So, yeah, and he said, you want to come down and work for us? And we had, you know, bought the house a couple of years earlier, and he offered a pretty good salary at the time, but I looked at the prices in the Newtown area, and I said, there's no way we're ever going to have a house down there of any consequence, and I really don't want to be a full-time writer. I want to be a woodworker and write about it. And so, okay, how about being a contributing editor? So in 1988, I signed a little contract, and still doing it.
You've been signing it every year
Yep,
since.
Yep.
And
So it's been a lot of fun. Writing for the magazine is, to me, a piece of cake. I mean, you guys do most of the work. You send the photographer up, you do the drawings, you do the rewriting. It takes me on average between 2 and 6 hours to write an article. And most of the time, for me, it's double dipping. I'm building a piece, getting paid for it, and then getting paid for the article as well. So I hope it's a win-win situation.
Oh,
People
yeah.
seem to read these things. Every once in a while I run into somebody. I read your article. I saw you in Fine Woodworking. Really? I'm so glad somebody reads that. It keeps me happy and keeps them happy.
lots of people. Do you know how many articles you've written for us?
Oh, it's over 80 by now.
I'll have to count.
Yeah, I've got them on my website as of last year, so we'll see.
Everyone, but you do a
Everyone.
lot of tools and materials, or like
Yeah,
little quick
they're
tips
not all
and
the
stuff
projects,
like that.
but,
Yeah.
not. I don't count the methods of work. I mean, or answering questions. That's not an article. That goes with being a contributing editor.
Right.
These are all full-fledged articles, except one that Vinnie Laurence, who was an editor at the time, did, and it was Dovetails, pins first or tails first, and it was Tayfrid looking over his glasses, and he was doing the pins first, and it was me, and I pulled my glasses,
And did your tails first?
and I did tails first, and
That's a great article.
it
I love
was
that
a
article.
good one.
That's one of our heavy hitters too. We
Yep.
get a lot of
It's
traffic
probably-
on that
yeah,
one.
it's gotten into a lot of compilations.
Yeah, it's a classic.
Yep.
Huh.
So, I mean, I like, even though I don't do much in the way of teaching anymore, I really like sharing things because a lot of people helped me on my way up. I mean, my dad taught me, and I've had so many other woodworkers, and the fact that the shakers actually let me in and measure their pieces and work on their pieces and let them haul them into my shop. And I've done some work for some collectors, and two of the pieces that I saw down at the Renwick ended up in my shop, with the stipulation that the owner covered the insurance, because when you have a $250,000 piece at the time, shaker pieces it was the height, late 80s, mid to 90s to the late 90s. Shaker pieces were going routinely for $250,000 for a sewing desk. And I'm not going to pay insurance on that. So they paid the insurance, and we measured everything. And then John Brandon, who we've worked with at East Point Conservation, did the refinishing. It was just an amazing job that he did. Just wonderful.
Did you do two of each piece?
No, I just did one.
Different...
and then the pictures that you probably saw are the original, and then the one I did.
Oh, okay.
And when we delivered them, it was kind of dark in the hallway. They couldn't tell the difference. Yes, I thought that was pretty cool.
That's what you're aiming
for.
Until
you open the drawer and you smell the new wood, as opposed to a piece that's 200 years old. But we copied every ink stain, virtually all the little scratches. I had to have custom hardware made. It's really nice. I've managed over the years to associate myself with really good metal workers, really good finishers, really good upholsterers. You have to have people who work on the same level that your work is, that you can count on.
Right.
And they won't, not only to do good work, but also as far as time commitments goes. When you've promised something to a customer and you send it off to the upholsterer, well, I can't get to it for 3 months, that doesn't cut it. So I've been very fortunate in establishing relationships with a lot of really good people that I can count on when push comes to shove, and their work is consistently excellent.
Yeah, I'm sure they say the same about your work too.
We hope so.
So somebody just starting out, your grandson is a little bit young to use it for this question, but pretend he wanted to be a woodworker and he came to you.
Oh,
well, what kind of advice would you give him?
Get an MBA from Harvard and then do woodworking as a hobby. If you want to do it as, the woodworking portion is a piece of cake. I mean, the Egyptians were making dovetails, 3,000 years ago, before Lee Nielsen and before Krenov invented craftsmanship. It's a blue-collar profession. It's not that difficult. In 1 year, you can make yourself, with good guidance and teaching, you can make yourself into a really fine woodworker. But there are lots of them out there. And the trick is not the woodworking so much as the marketing. And I'm not saying that the marketing should take precedence. And I mean, I've seen both sides of the coin. I've seen a lot of woodworkers who were really talented that after 2 years they went back to their day job because they didn't have the marketing down pat. And on the other hand, I've seen a lot of less than stellar furniture makers who've gone big time, who had the marketing down to a science and were turning out schlock because it was mass produced. And there's nothing wrong with mass produced, and everybody has to have a place to sit and to eat and to sleep on, obviously. But when you start cutting corners, and then, I remember one ad I saw in a magazine. It was a pie crust table, high gloss, and there's this guy in a ruffled shirt with a plane, and he was going to push it across. What kind of, come on, you don't plane a table after it's done.
Finished.
What are we doing here? That's just cheesy marketing. It's supposed to look like it's handmade. It's not handmade. The thing was turned on the lathe and carved out with a computer. But fortunately, there's still a few people around that value real handmade and real custom pieces. Since I've been in business, I've had under 200 clients. Most of them are repeat customers. I don't appeal to the masses, and I have no pretense of, trying to make furniture for the mass. That's not something that, unless you're starting a big factory, and then you're no longer doing woodworking. You're running strictly a business and crunching numbers and getting bank loans and arranging deals. But I like the hands-on.
Yeah. Do you know how many pieces you've made?
852 as of last December.
852.
Yes, I'll probably make another 20 this year. I don't know if I'll get to 1,000, but that's not bad for,
So you have a lot of repeat customers.
Oh yeah.
That's great.
Yep.
You've made a nice life for yourself doing something that you love, and you still seem to be as enthusiastic and interested and passionate about it.
Yeah, I just don't have as much energy as I did when I was 30. Other than that, yeah, getting back to just starting out, it's tough. Today's generation, I don't know if they don't value. I know the antique market, for example, has completely gone down the tubes. People who bought high boys for $300,000 20 years ago couldn't get rid of them now unless they gave them to Goodwill. Antiques magazine is out of business. A friend of ours, Jerry Curry, up the coast, who used to make some of the finest ball and claw carvings, no longer able to do that. Yeah, mid-century modern's coming back, but I mean, my daughter, yeah, I'll take one of your pieces if you insist, but I'd rather buy at Goodwill. Come on. So it's, I mean, there are people out there that value this stuff. It's just a matter of finding them and convincing them that a table that costs 12 times as much as one you can get at Walmart is an investment. And the fact that this table will outlast them and probably their kids if it's built right. Whereas you go to Walmart and 90% of the stuff you see is going to be in the landfill in 2 years. And that is not sustainable on this planet.
No, it's not.
I was grocery shopping the other day, and it's a big grocery store in Portland, and they had one 80-foot aisle with potato chips on both sides, just in little plastic bags. Okay, they're all going to get eaten, and what's going to happen to all that crap? All those wrappers, all that plastic, all that, we're going to garbage ourselves off this planet.
We're on our way.
We're well on our way.
So we just went strawberry picking.
Yes.
This basket is great.
Well, thank you. Another shaker design. Well built, relatively easy, little finger joints. They did their finger joints same way I do mine, on a table saw. As a matter of fact, I saw one set up. It was a company up the coast, not the Shakers, but they had a really clever setup. They had a series, they had a special saw built, and they had a series of 15 saw blades with exact spacers in between, so they could run one board over at one time and get all the fingers cut at once.
Oh.
And it was the ultimate in mass production. It's a very strong joint. I mean, it actually beats Dovetails because it's got more glue area, even though it doesn't mechanically lock in one direction as opposed to the other. You get a little bit of glue in there, and you've got a tremendous amount of glue area. And
it's
the
all
stuff
long
is
grain to
lightweight.
long
It's
grain.
all long grain to long grain, yeah. And then these little bent handles are kind of cute. They're well balanced. They're made out of local green ash bent over a form. 2 rivets and you're good to go. And the secret being with a lot of the shaker, not only the baskets, but the oval carriers and even their lap desks, the bottoms are all quarter sawn pine. Which
Glued
you can
right on.
Glued right on. Quarter sawn pine. On some of their lap desks, they glued on to just about 12 inches, and it's lasted for 200 years with a minimum of wood movement. It's amazing stuff, the most well-behaved wood in North America. Have another strawberry.
I'll have another strawberry. All right, my final question. Quickly, without thinking about it too much, your top 10 musicians, if you could only listen to 10 musicians, artists, whether it be a solo artist or a band,
Okay.
top 10.
Okay. Cowboy Junkies, Bruce Springfield, Rodrigo y Gabriela. Janis is gone. I mean, I listen to a lot of 60s, 70s rock. Janis is gone. Jimi Hendrix is gone. The Doors are gone.
That's 6.
There's 6. You want 2 more, huh?
4 more.
4 more. Does Beethoven count?
Sure.
He's gone too, you know.
It's okay.
I do listen to a lot of classic. I listen to a lot of folk hammered. I used to make hammered dulcimers.
You did.
Yep, I listened to some of those. A little bit of jazz, not a lot. Charlie Bird, my musical taste, as long as it's not rap or opera, I'm good.
You're good. Yeah. It's one of the reasons I like coming up here so much. The soundtrack is always good in the shop.
Gee, thanks. That's because when I met you, I found out you were a Cowboy Junkies fan too.
Yes.
That's why.
It was one of the first things I noticed in your shop. And
And
we've seen the Cowboy Junkies together.
Oh yeah. I will send you that tape,
Okay. Thank
that
you.
bootleg.
Yeah, that would be
We got
great.
tons of them. And they encourage it. I mean, they have a guy that, Cookie Bob, who goes to all their shows and records everything.